Call of Duty Ghosts is a 2013 first-person shooter video game developed by Infinity Ward and published by Activision. It is the 10th major installment in the Call of Duty series and the 6th developed by Infinity Ward. It was released for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and Wii U on November the 5th of 2013. This game was released with the launch of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. The campaign is one where the action and destruction never stops, and there are twists and turns around every corner. Just when you think you know what's going to happen next, a twist comes along that makes you rethink everything. It reminds me very much of a Nathan Drake-esque Uncharted story. Some of the set pieces would even make Nathan Drake blush, and it feels like the developers found much inspiration from the Uncharted series set pieces, especially Uncharted 2. You play as Logan Walker, an older brother to David Hesh Walker and son of Elias Walker, a soldier who once shit hits the fan, is given the opportunity along with his brother to join the Ghosts, an elite group of special ops soldiers. The best way of describing them would be like they are the video game equivalent of the real life SEAL Team 6, hard to get into and by invitation only can you join, whose feats are legendary and mythical. At one point you are told of the origins of the Ghosts and it makes your jaw drop. I mean, this is the kind of elite special operations squad that gives a nightmares.
It was a different time, a different enemy. 60 men from Tier 1 teams were sent to face down a force of 500 enemy fighters. Their objective? To force the enemy back from a civilian hospital and keep its occupants alive. For 3 days they held their ground, but the enemy's numbers were too great. The 60 were cut down to 15. They wouldn't last another night, and the enemy knew it. Under the cover of darkness, they evacuated the hospital, sending only one of their own to lead the way. The rest returned to the line and took up positions beneath the bodies of their fallen brothers. As they lay in wait, the blood from the dead poured over them. The sand stuck to their skin like a shroud, changing them, anointing them. When the enemy drew near, the remaining 14 rose out of the desert sand. They were like hunters that couldn't be seen, using stealth their enemies couldn't defend against. When the men ran dry of ammunition, they used their blades. And when the blades ran dull, they used their hands. When the dust and sand had settled, only one of the enemy had survived. He was picked up in the desert, wandering aimlessly, traumatized. He expressed warnings to others of a force so menacing and unbeatable, it could only be described as supernatural. He called them ghosts.
You then find out who is leading the enemy and go up against one of the most, and I must give this guy credit, dangerous, smart, and ruthless villains I have seen in a Call of Duty game. He goes by the name Gabriel T. Rourke. This guy is a brilliant tactician and covers every contingency. Instead of feeling as if you're winning against him, you're made to feel as if he's one step ahead of you all through the campaign, which for the most part he is. He has an agenda and a reason behind hunting down ghosts, which I won't go into and spoil as it is an integral part of the story and the main reason behind the events of the campaign. What I will say is that betrayal is a good motivator for revenge. The developers also fleshed out his backstory so we know why he does what he does. Instead of just showing us through a cutscene, we actually got to play the story out. This helps in the player understanding the antagonist's mindset, their motivation for revenge against the ghosts. The cutscenes are also done in a very different and very visual style, which makes them stand out from the normal video game cutscenes. The MacGuffin for this story is based on the Odin space weapon and the reverse-engineered counterpart Loki, which is a space-based satellite weapon based off the hypothetical theory called kinetic bombardment, which theoretically does and can work. A smaller scale version was used during the Vietnam War, whereby lone metal darts would drop from the sky, and as they sped up, as they fell, if you were unlucky to be hit by one, it would split you in half, and it has been seen in movies such as G.I. Joe Retaliation.
Now you're looking at an advanced weapons system we call Project Zeus. There are 7 Zeus satellites orbiting Earth. Each satellite contains 10 hollow platinum tubes filled with a tungsten rod.
Zeus, satellite 1A, approaching London.
Ordnance live and loaded. Awaiting drop authorization.
Now to direct the rod to its target, we don't launch it or fire it.
We drop it. Gravity does the rest. Observe.
Satellite 1A, we have remote launch authorization.
3, 2, 1, drop.
A rod touches down 8 times faster than a bullet, and with a force significantly greater than a nuclear warhead. None of the fallout. All of the fun.
The story to me felt different because in most Call of Duties the story plays out like a tug of war. You win some, the enemy wins some, but in this it feels like you're on the back foot the entire game. You're made to feel that you're winning, then boom, the enemy comes out of nowhere and blindsides you and you end up right back where you started. The reason behind this is the developers were hoping for a sequel, so the first half would be about establishing and explaining why Rourke is hunting you and have you winning then losing to set up the sequel, which sadly we may never see due to the crippling negative reviews and scores that were received in this entry of the Call of Duty series, which I still to this day do not understand why it got so negatively reviewed. The story to me felt like the developers threw everything into the single player campaign. The set pieces were amazing. I mean, there is one scene where you're in a high-rise building going after a high-value target, and Rourke, instead of being shocked, anticipated you were coming and blows the lower half of the skyscraper, and then it falls into the building next to you, and from there you're in a fight or flight mode to escape before you're either burned to death or crushed. Another has you in a plane, and the inspiration for this scene felt very much like it came from the Christian Bale movie The Dark Knight Rises, in which Bane does something similar at the beginning of the movie, which I picked up upon straight away.
Well, congratulations! You got yourself caught!
Sir?
Now what's the next step of your master plan?
Crashing this plane. With no survivors. Doctor, now is not the time for fear. That comes later.
Other amazing moments include when you get to use the Loki weapon from space and use it against the enemy and blow massive craters into the earth below. You also get to use helicopters and tanks, which is a staple of the Call of Duty series, but it done so well in this campaign and breaks up the boots on the ground action in a very good way. The flying mission is also good because the lock-on system works very well and it isn't hard to block incoming missiles or to hit your designated targets. The other awesome aspect about Ghost is how interactive with the game you can be. For example, at one point you get to use a drill on a thick steel door instead of just watching your teammates do it. At another point you get to download data from a computer in a skyscraper, and you're also able to take control of a missile weapons system and use it to bring down enemy attack helicopters and speedboats. You also get to use a remote sniper to remove dug-in enemies and also to cover your escape, which I think is a really cool thing that they did for this particular campaign, because normally most of these things are done for you by teammates, whereas in this one you actually get to download stuff from the computer. You actually get to use a drill. One of the other amazing aspects about the single player campaign is that you go to places that weren't really touched by the Call of Duty campaigns back then. For example, there are moments where you head up into space and have fights like you're playing James Bond and Moonraker. At another point you play a mission underwater. You also then have a brief stealth mission in a heavily dense forest scene. You also go out to sea to an oil rig and cause havoc on a massive scale. In fact, throughout most of the campaign you wreak havoc, the type only usually seen in Battlefield. The particle effects are something to see to be believed. Everything was thrown into the story and campaign to make it as fun as possible, which it is, and to also make it stand out, which again, it was very successful in doing. You also have a companion, which again hasn't been seen in a Call of Duty series either before this, which is a lovely dog called Riley, who you also get to control at certain points and use in a stealth section of the game when you discover who's running the enemy army. This dog is and can be used to attack the enemy, and at one point you must protect and carry him due to him being injured when he saved you from being killed. The biggest shock to me was how much hate this game got on release, and not for the story but for the multiplayer. I mean, everyone went nuts and bashed the game for its horrible multiplayer, which really doesn't make Call of Duty what it is. I mean, yes, it's a staple of the game, sure, but it's the story aspect that truly makes Call of Duty what it is. The sad part about this is because it got such a bad reception and reviews, we will likely never get a sequel to one of the most fun and enjoyable Call of Duty campaigns I've played in quite some time. It went places and did things not many other Call of Duties up until that point had done. The problem with the ending to the game is it ends on a cliffhanger that, just like the Order 1886, may never see a resolution, which is a problem because if you make a game relying so heavily on having a sequel that you base everything around it and the game flops, you leave behind one half of a game with unanswered questions and a game that is only half finished, which is why it's a risky move that sadly in this case backfired. Overall, this game is fun and enjoyable and does have some jaw-drop moments. I just wish that it hadn't received so much hate, because had it not, we might have had a wrap-up to the story, which isn't unlikely, but isn't likely either. Please rate, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video game review to see more video game reviews just like this.